So let's look at our last set of examples for inverse functions, and we're going to look at the following. Let's find the derivative of the inverse tangent function. So we're going to start with the tangent function. F of x is tangent of x. And remember, we need our function to be 1-to-1 to have an inverse, and so we're going to restrict tangent between negative pi over 2 and pi over 2. And then the inverse function, which I'm going to call g, would be the inverse tangent or arctangent function. And then we want to find the derivative of this function right here. We want to find the derivative of g, but in order to do that, I'm going to need to find the derivative of f. So f prime of x, derivative of tangent, we learned that previously. It's secant squared, but we're going to use an identity here. Secant squared is the same thing as tangent squared plus 1. Okay, so now let's find g prime of x. Because it's an inverse, we can use our inverse formula. It's 1 over f prime of g of x. So g prime of x will be 1 over f prime. G of x is the arctangent function. So I'm just substituting in for g of x right now. Now you're going to go into your derivative function, which is up here, and you're going to plug in arctangent of x in place of x. So this becomes 1 over, and it's tangent of arctangent of x squared plus 1. But when you take tangent of arctangent of x, they're inverse functions, so this is going to just be the same thing as x squared plus 1. So there's the derivative of the inverse tangent function. So you can do something similar to find the derivatives of the other inverse trig functions, but I'm just going to state them all here. The derivative of arc sine is 1 over the square root of 1 minus x squared. The derivative of arctangent, which we just did, was 1 over 1 plus x squared. The derivative of the inverse secant function is 1 over the absolute value of x, the square root of x squared minus 1. And so the other three, the derivative of arc cosine will be a negative 1 over the square root of 1 minus x squared. The derivative of arc cotangent will be a negative 1 over 1 plus x squared. And finally, the derivative of arc cosecant will be a negative 1 over the absolute value of x, the square root of x squared minus 1. And I've kind of lined them up in this nice way because if you notice, so let me make 2 columns here. If you look from left to right in a single row, they just differ by a minus sign, and that's it. Okay, so these are the derivatives of the 6 inverse trig functions, and you're going to need to know these derivatives.